So you just got a lot about the vision and history and strategy. What are we trying to do? First thing we're doing is we're growing something called the Slow Money Alliance. I've referred to it a number of times. It is now 55 people. There's a financial part of it, which isn't the main part, but everyone has put in at least $1,000. The highest amount was $50,000. And these were 55 people who just came around this idea in the last year, many of whom I've been working with for a long time, some of whom heard about it and kind of came to the table. So who is it? It's George Seaman, the CEO of Organic Valley. It's Peter Kinder, one of the founders of the social investing field. His ex-wife, Amy Dominy, runs the Dominy Funds. And Peter, if you don't know what he's doing, it's because he's kind of the back office. He has the research arm, so he's providing institutional research to about 450 institutional investors in the country about social investing. He's one of the real thinkers in the social investment field. Elliot Coleman, I mentioned. Joan Gussow, maybe some of you read Joan Gussow's book, I don't know, This Organic Life. So it's a lot of leaders in sustainable ag, social investing, and philanthropy have come together in the Slow Money Alliance. Why is that important? Well, at first I didn't know what it meant. And gradually, during the course of last year, it became clear to us what this alliance is kind of like it's like the infrastructure, the intellectual and social capital that will help us figure out how to invent those things I mentioned, those crazy ideas like the CSA fund and the Muni fund or whatever. This is the intelligentsia that's going to try to help me figure out how to do those things. There's one big one that I haven't mentioned yet, one big new thing that I'm going to come to in the bottom of this slide. Now, in the last month, so how long have we been at this? It's important to say that we started in January of last year. So January 2008, 16 of us spent 3 days together and decided that slow money was no longer just an idea, it was something we had to do. It took me most of last year to get to where we are right now, to figure out how we're going to move forward. One of the things that has become clear to us in the last month is that we have to create an opportunity for lots more people to be involved. I don't know how this is going to prove out in this audience, but I'll say when we spend a day with people in these workshops, at the end of it, going, what can we do? We want to get involved. And I'm going, well, we just have this alliance and it's for leaders and you have to have $1,000. There wasn't a way for people to be involved. So if you are intrigued when you leave this, before you leave this room, we're going to have somebody, if I had a staff person here, which I don't have, I would have them out with a clipboard in the back, but luckily Wes and Margie and whatever, somebody's helping out in the back. If you are interested in getting on our mailing list and learning more about what we're doing, please give us your email address and name before you leave. Now, there is an option if you want to get involved right away. We are going to be circulating a series of slow money principles, which I have to write on the plane probably tomorrow, but you get the idea. And if you want to endorse those principles and contribute $50, we would love to have you as a signatory to these principles. And what occurred to us is we don't know how we're going to aggregate money. I guess I'll give you the punchline, the fourth bullet here. I'm going to go out into this crazy environment the second half of this year and try to raise tens of millions of dollars for this. Now, who am I going to raise tens of millions of dollars from? I'm going to go to all the biggest billionaires that I sometimes criticize for not being philanthropic enough. I'll try not to do that when I'm asking for money. And the big foundations, the usual suspects, and try to get $5 and $10 and $20 million checks from them to do this. Now, I have, if I come back here next year and I've succeeded, I will be very excited. And if I haven't, I will report my travails to you, and you will take me out for a drink. But what we don't know is whether it might be possible to aggregate not that much money, but still meaningful amounts of money from lots of small contributors. So I'm not here to sell you. I want to make it clear that we are just, at the moment, we are testing all variables here. I guess if I were reporting to you something that I'd like you to hear as a positive, it's that this is happening in communities all over the United States. There are lots of small food enterprises. Everyone's talking to one another, not everyone, but in places like Santa Barbara, Western Massachusetts, Northern Vermont, Northern California, Madison, Bellingham, where I'm going tomorrow, at Seattle, Bellingham. So lots of these pockets, things are bubbling up, but it hasn't quite come together yet, and we are hoping to catalyze. So if it turns out that there are thousands of people who want to contribute small amounts and sort of help push this forward, that would be a beautiful thing. Whether that becomes a meaningful amount of capital or not, I could not begin to tell you. I mean, we're just going to see what happens. Even if it's not statistically relevant in dollars, it might help us when we go to the big guys for the money, though, if they see thousands of people are signing on to this thing. So that's really my hope, is that we'll be able to, with this story and the team we have, if we can show that there's some real support in regions around the country, that we will be able to aggregate some meaningful amount of money. And then what would we do with this money? We would come back into various regions of the country and try to work with local groups to set up some of these innovative new intermediaries. The perfect scenario would be we'd never have to invest in an individual company. We'd only invest in intermediaries, and you guys would figure out how to invest in all the companies, but we probably won't get there the first time. We'll probably have to do a certain amount of investing to demonstrate this. You've gotten the idea, I think, from these remarks. We're putting on these institutes around the country. We did Vermont and Northern California at the end of 2008. I'm going to Bellingham to do one in 2 days, 3 days. And these institutes are tending to be between 50 and 100 people for a whole day or a day and a half. And it's farmers, food entrepreneurs, donors, investors, and NGO leaders talking about how to build a local food system, what kind of capital would be needed. It is likely we're going to do a national slow money gathering. This is a brand new idea. And again, this is just us reacting as we're talking to people. It seems that we need to at least run one flag up the flagpole. This will probably be in Santa Fe, near where I live, and say anybody who wants to come from any region, we did all these regional things, and if you want to come into one larger gathering and cross-fertilize between regions, and we'll probably do that in around October in Santa Fe, so stay tuned as we make a final decision on that. And last, but not at all least, is how we are going to organize our pooled capital, if I can raise this money. Now, this first thing is a brand new idea. It's never been done. And that will either make it be a great innovation or another great idea that never quite made it. And I think it's the former, otherwise I wouldn't be standing here telling you about it. So I Fund stands for integral. I stands for integral. When I described before money coming into a nonprofit that would all be invested out, what we're talking about is raising meaningful amounts of philanthropic money from large donors or a large number of small, if that turns out to be feasible, but taking all that philanthropic capital and investing it in all these small food enterprises and testing, in a sense, the market. Like, what kind of returns can we get? Think about it. If we're doing it as a nonprofit, we're not promising a rate of return to any investors. We're promising to take all that money and do the best job we can as a catalytic investor in all these different communities, which will allow us to test a whole bunch of things. There's a whole discussion there about the past, present, and future of American philanthropy, but I touched on it before. You know, if you make $1 billion and you take $100 million and put it into your family foundation, how much do you give away a year? $5 million. You give away, well, that's the IRS requirement. Some foundations give away a little bit more, but most don't. So your $1 billion turns into $5 million worth of donations a year. In this model, all $100 million that goes in would all be invested in for-profit, small for-profit businesses, mission-driven businesses that are trying to solve the social and environmental problems that you as a philanthropy are interested in. This could, well, I don't want to use the word revolutionize because that sounds too highfalutin, but it could catalyze the next generation of philanthropic activity in this country. To me, we don't have, it took from the dawn of time to now to create 1,200 billionaires. There are 1,200 billionaires on the planet right now. We don't have time to try to create the next 10,000 billionaires and hope they'll all give away $100 million to give away their, I mean, however that worked in the 20th century, that is not going to solve the problems in the 21st century. So this iFund idea is a big idea. We are working on it right now internally. We're writing a white paper on, can we do it within existing IRS regulations? Do we have to create new regs? It looks like we can do it within existing regs, but just stay tuned. We're actively, by the end of May, we should have something to report to the public about our thinking on how to do this iFund. The mega drill, anybody know the term? I'm pretty sure no one does. It means large earthworm. And that fund is basically the more obvious way to go to market, which is just a for-profit investment entity that makes lower returns, meaning it's not complicated from the IRS standpoint. Any accredited investor could put money in there. And it's not our first choice, but it would be a close second choice, meaning if the iFund is too complicated or we can't raise the philanthropic dollars, then we will also offer people this other bucket that, you know, if someone wants to put a meaningful amount of money to work and kind of go for the ride on the returns, saying, look, I don't need the tax deduction. I know what you're doing is different. I don't want to keep my money in the stock market anymore. Here's a slug, go invest it, and God willing, you'll give me back a little return. That's what the Mega Drill Fund will be. So it doesn't sound like you think I'm going to be able to raise that money, but we'll see.